Ferrari was founded by Enzo Ferrari in Modena, Italy in 1939. Enzo had previously been a salesman and racing driver for Alfa Romeo, but in 1939 he founded his own company. In its early days, the Modena-based company specialised in racing cars, but due to bomb threats during World War II, he moved his factory to Maranello in 1943. Nevertheless, this factory was bombed twice. Yet despite this, Ferraris are still built in Maranello today. In 1945, the company started using the Ferrari name, and the first car to bear the name was the Ferrari 125S of 1947. It won 6 of its first 13 races and was powered by a 118 horsepower 1.5-litre V12, enough to see the car up to 130 miles an hour. However, only 2 125s were ever built. In 1950, Ferrari released the America, a series of V12 front-engine rear-wheel drive Grand Tourers that would sit as Ferrari's flagship until 1967. During that time, 175 Americas were built, the pinnacle of the range being the 500 Superfast. Designed by Pininfarina and powered by a 400 horsepower 5-litre V12, the Superfast was capable of 174 miles an hour. In 1952, Ferrari launched the 250 series. Powered by a 3-litre V12, early models had 200 horsepower, but the car received various updates and special models during its 12-year life. Most notable was the 300 horsepower GTO, of which 36 were built between 1962 and 1964. These have become hugely collectible models. Ferrari holds 8 out of the 10 records for the most expensive cars ever sold at auction, with the 250 GTO holding 2nd, 3rd and 4th place, selling for $52, $48 and $38 million respectively. Part of the exclusivity was due to the fact that if you wanted to own one, you'd need to be personally chosen by Enzo Ferrari himself. Ferrari launched its first mid-engined rear-wheel drive car in 1966, the 365P Speciale. It had a 4.4-litre V12 that produced 380 horsepower and had a unique 3-seat configuration like a McLaren F1. It launched the same year Lamborghini launched its first mid-engine rear-wheel drive car, the Miura. Only 2 were produced, with the technology being passed on to the Dinos of the following year. The Dino was Ferrari's first ever V6 model. It never wore a Ferrari badge and was simply known as the Dino 206. Its engine came from the Fiat Dino, which controversially Ferrari quoted 180 horsepower for, while Fiat quoted 160, despite the fact that the engines were picked off the production line at random and not modified. Only 152 were built in 2 years, before the Dino was upgraded to a 2.4-litre V6, with 192 horsepower, which was good for nearly 150 miles an hour. The 246 was a much bigger commercial success, shifting 3,500 units in 6 years. In 1968, the 365 was launched. It was unofficially named the Daytona, a name it had gained following Ferrari's win in the 1967 24-hour endurance race at the Daytona International Speedway in Florida. The car was a 2-seat, front-engined, rear-wheel drive Grand Tourer with a 4.4-litre V12 that produced 350 horsepower. The car was praised for its impressive ability to hold high speeds over a long distance. In 1969, Fiat buys 50% off Ferrari. In 1973, Ferrari launches the Dino 308, its first mid-engined rear-wheel drive V8 model. The Dino nameplate was used to market non-12-cylinder Ferraris since 1957, but the Dino name was dropped in 1976 and the car was simply known as the Ferrari 308. Power came from a 2.9-litre V8 that was good for 255 horsepower with a top speed of 170 miles an hour. The same year, Ferrari launched the Berlinetta Boxer, Ferrari's first mid-engined 12-cylinder road car. It featured a 4.4 or 4.9-litre flat 12, and in GT4 spec was good for 190 miles an hour. 1984 sees the release of the Ferrari Testarossa, one of the most iconic Ferrari models. It was described as the car that expressed 1980s excess like no other, and it featured a far more imposing, in-your-face look than the daintier Berlinetta Boxer that it replaced. It featured an uprated 4.9-litre flat 12 from the Berlinetta, and in 512 TR spec had 422 horsepower, which was good for 195 miles an hour. During its 13-year life, nearly 10,000 models were built, making it one of the most produced Ferrari models ever. The Testarossa was the last flat 12-engined Ferrari. In 1984, Ferrari launches the 288 GTO, Its first ever turbo car had been the 208 from 2 years earlier. However, while that features a single turbo 2 litre with 220 horsepower, the 288 featured a 2.9 litre twin turbo V8 with 400 horsepower. It could hit 60 in 5 seconds and had a top speed of 190 miles an hour, making it one of the fastest road cars at the time. In 1987, the F40 was released. Ferrari's 40th birthday present to itself. It featured a 480 horsepower 2.9 litre twin turbo V8, essentially an uprated version of the engine found in the 288 GTO. It could hit 60 in 4 seconds and was the first ever production car to hit 200 miles an hour. It was also the last car developed by Enzo Ferrari, as he died in 1988, at which point Fiat increased its shares in the company to 90%. In 1995, Ferrari launched its first mid-engined rear-wheel drive V12 convertible, the F50. It was powered by a 512 horsepower 4.7 litre V12 that had previously been developed from a Ferrari Formula 1 car. Despite the controversial looks, the F50 could hit 60 in 3.7 seconds and had a top speed of 202 miles an hour. In 2002, Ferrari launched the Enzo, its halo car that was named after the company's founder. It featured a Formula 1 style carbon fibre body as well as a 650 horsepower 6 litre mid-mounted V12. It could hit 60 in 3.1 seconds and had a top speed of 220 miles an hour. In 2007, Ferrari launched the 599. It was a huge upgrade from the 575 that it had replaced. It was a 205 miles an hour Grand Tourer, which featured a slightly detuned Enzo engine which produced 620 horsepower. In 2008, Ferrari launched its first front-engine rear-wheel drive V8 model, the California. It used a 460 horsepower version of the 4.3 litre V8 from the F430. In 2014, an uprated version called the California T was released. It featured a 560 horsepower 3.9 litre twin-turbo V8, the first turbo Ferrari in over 20 years. The car was capable of 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds with a top speed of 196 miles an hour. 2009 saw the launch of the 458, a new generation in Ferrari design that was met with great critical acclaim. Ferrari's new mid-engine rear-wheel drive V8 model was a huge step up from the F430 it replaced, and its special spec had 600 horsepower, could hit 60 in 3 seconds dead, and had a top speed of over 200 miles an hour. In 2011, Ferrari launched its first four-wheel drive model, the FF. It had the largest engine ever fitted to a Ferrari road car. The 650 horsepower 6.3 litre V12 was an enlarged version of the engine found in the 599 and Enzo models. It could hit 60 in 3.6 seconds and had a 208 mile an hour top speed, the fastest four-seater on sale at its launch. 2013 sees the launch of the LaFerrari. The controversially named model follows the 288 GTO, the F40 and the Enzo. It's their first hybrid model and it combined an electric motor and a 6.3 litre V12 for a total output of 950 horsepower. It does 0 to 60 in 2.4 and has a top speed of over 220 miles an hour. It's the first model in over 40 years not to have been designed by Pininfarina. 2019 saw the launch of the SF90 Stradale. Ferrari's first ever plug-in hybrid model was powered by 3 electric motors and a twin-turbo 4 litre V8 for a total output of 986 horsepower. Car and driver posted a 0 to 60 time of 2 seconds dead, the fastest of any production car in the world. In 2020, Ferrari released the Roma, a 4-seater Grand Tourer that was available as a coupe or a convertible. It has won multiple awards for its design and many believe it to be the most beautiful Ferrari of modern times. In 2021, Ferrari launched the 296, its first 6-cylinder car since the Dino sub-brand had been around. It featured a twin-turbo V6 and an electric motor for a total output of 819 horsepower, which could see it hit 60 in 2.4 seconds and had a top speed of 205 miles an hour. The car goes directly head-to-head with McLaren's first V6 hybrid sports car, the Artura, its closest rival. 2022 sees Ferrari launch the Daytona SP3, their latest model from the Icona series of limited production high-performance models. Each will cost in excess of £2 million before options. Power comes from an 830 horsepower mid-mounted V12 without any hybrid assistance. The last model to feature this setup was the Enzo Ferrari from 2002. In 2023, Ferrari launches the Purosangue, their first ever SUV model. It's one of the fastest SUVs in the world, and it's one of the only ones available with a V12 engine, where many manufacturers now use turbocharged V8s to have lower emissions and save on production costs. It's also one of the most expensive SUVs by a large margin. 2024 sees Ferrari launch the 12 Cilindri, a rear-wheel drive 820 horsepower naturally aspirated V12 Grand Tourer without hybrid assistance. This model was released against all odds at a time when all models released from Aston Martin, Lamborghini and Maserati have smaller displacement 6 and 8 cylinder engines supplemented by turbocharging or hybrid assistance. Not only is this likely to be the last 12-cylinder Ferrari, emissions regulations could result in this being the world's last ever 12-cylinder naturally aspirated production car.